You found a place to belong here in the Circle of Friends. I'm Missy, and we have been having a great week this week with Joanne, Carol, and Gail and talking about entrepreneurism. Wow, I'm learning how to say that word. Not just learning how to say the word, ladies, but thank you for bringing this to the table, because the idea that each of us has a calling and to encourage others to find out what that calling is absolutely incredibly important, I think. And it's probably something that our listeners don't hear a lot about, to be encouraged to seek out their calling and to live it out.
I think that's so true. I think it's something that we're missing, encouraging people to do and follow through with the things that God has put in them, their passions, their dreams, or their burdens.
Yeah.
Because those things will lead you someplace.
Yeah.
And this has just been a fun week.
And
I'm anxious. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, for those that are just tuning in, it's like, I don't want anybody to feel marginalized, like, well, I don't own a business, or this is about way more than that. This is about, like Missy said, the dreams that are in your heart. I mean, maybe it looks like ministry, or, there's just different ways that we express that entrepreneurship. And that's pioneer spirit, I guess, is the way I would say
That's
it.
a good way to put it.
It's like pioneering something that God is calling you to, and then just seeing where that leads. And we've been in Nehemiah and watching how he partnered with God to accomplish something. And that's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Yesterday we heard from, we heard from Carol and we heard from Gail. And if you missed yesterday, I'm really sorry. But it was really good.
You can go out to the website.
You can go to the website and look it up.
Thelight959.com and look in the archives.
It was definitely a very interesting day. I really enjoyed that. And Gail was sharing her story. And so we, at the end of the day yesterday, asked her, well, I guess we didn't ask her. I just pretty much told her.
Put her on the spot. Let's be honest here. We put her on the spot.
But that's your gift, Joanne. It's like when you direct someone, the person just wants to do it because you do it so
I wish
lovingly.
That was always true. But I would like to hear just a little bit more about. We heard how you got started, but what specifically do you do for a business, or what is your? Describe to us what you do.
That's a great question. I don't really know. Just show up.
Just
That's
show
what
up.
I do. I pray to the God of heaven to give me success, and then show up.
And then you go build walls.
Or tear them down.
Or tear them
Yes,
down.
exactly. Tear down the ones that need torn down and build the ones that need to be built.
Well, you talked about the DISC profile and how that helped you, but that is a tool that you use. You use that DISC profile when you go into a company to help people understand communication, right? Let's start there.
So how I'm a tool bearer. So yesterday I talked about that we're all vessels of light and we're all vessels of oil, and I have found my identity in that, in an environment, especially in an environment where the business owner wants to create a culture that's life-giving. And so I help facilitate that life-giving culture. I like to look at businesses as a child that's growing, and there's different body, there's different parts. And also from a team building point of view, I like to look at a company like a garden, where we need to create different environments for different types of people so that they thrive. And that's the responsibility of a business owner, to create that kind of environment. And like you're saying, it's a calling. So with that, I have tools of transformation, is what I call it. Because the tools that I introduce into a culture brought transformation to me, brought transformation to my worldview, and it brought transformation to how I communicate, collaborate, connect, and do resolve conflict. And so many times those are such a part of business, and that we don't learn those things in school. We don't learn those things in high school, any education point of view.
Well, I like what you just said, and the things that you just said are not true only in business. Those are true in a home, and that applies to everybody. Everybody can learn how to collaborate and communicate. I love that. Very good.
Don't forget the resolving conflict, because that's really tough for a lot of us, right?
Well, it's so true, because the reality is that's the first place we learn it, is in the home. And we don't always learn it in a healthy way. And then we take that way that we interact and communicate and relate to work with us. And it may or may not be appropriate. And so you layer that on with your natural temperament, which mine wasn't always appreciated in my home. Can we just say that? I was a little too happy in the morning. I got a lot of flack for that. Then I find that there's a proverb that actually says,
Yes.
watch when you give a cheerful greeting to someone in the morning. It's like, oh, that's very interesting. So sometimes when I have an 8 o'clock meeting or a 7 o'clock meeting, actually, I did a 4 a.m. roundtable at a local Amish-owned business, and it was amazing. As a matter of fact, the owner beat me there. It was really interesting. So that being said, I will apologize early in the morning since I read that proverb. Like, please forgive me for being so happy right now. I'll try not to annoy you, but it's just natural, and I celebrate that. But isn't that true? So we have no idea why we're creating these natural barriers for one another. So it was so, and I, of course, take it as personal rejection. So it was fascinating and so freeing and liberating when my friend Bernie just saw the opportunity. He actually got these profiles to help set pastors free in Latin America. They were asking for a tool to help them become better leaders. And so it was out of that he offered it to us one day around a round table. And John spoke in a meeting, someday some of you here are going to do this for a living. You're going to help people in companies or wherever they are understand the value of the principles. And then he told me later, and the profiles fit in that somehow too. And I remember my throat constricting and like my heart pounding. It's like, wow, really? I would never thought of that. But it sure did transform my life. And again, my passion was to go help entrepreneurs and transform the lives of others. And then it branched from there. In fact, entrepreneurs, their first institution that they want me to help them with is their marriage a lot. They know that the success of the business is actually built on the success of their marriage. And then they'll ask me to help their kids. And then when they're dating, their kids start dating, then they'll ask me to help them. So it just goes on and on. But in 1991, I was invited to the round table. And like I said, that was that character trait layered on top of what I'd found out about what I knew about my temperament. And so I was selling radio at the time. In 2 years, I went to Roundtable, and I was discipled before I came into the kingdom, became a citizen of the kingdom. So I really wasn't a full-fledged citizen. I was just kind of tap dancing around with the God of the universe. We had more of a fear-based relationship. And then as I entered and studied his heart for his children, one proverb at a time in Roundtable, it transformed me so much that I wanted to know the author of these amazing proverbs and got to understand his father's heart. And my father, it was wonderful, gave me gifts. So it was actually Luke 11:11 that a gentleman from Guatemala shared with me to come into the kingdom fully 2 years after going through Roundtable every week, one proverb at a time. And so it was during that time, though, I was selling radio. And Subway was one of my key clients. And I was selling K105, country radio. It was the top-rated station in northeastern Ohio. And after I came into the kingdom, became a citizen of the kingdom, I didn't want to sell beer anymore. I just didn't want to sell or promote, and I just really got very schnockered about it all. I was like, almost got religious on the other side, just what I wanted to promote, what I wanted to be a part of. So I went and applied to unfortunately, the least rated radio station in northeastern Ohio was a Christian radio station, which was unfortunate, but it was like heaven on earth to me because all I called on was kingdom entrepreneurs. And then Subway, they came with me and they started buying commercials on that radio station. And so we were doing a remote and we brought people into the store, but one of the managers was having difficulty communicating with her staff. And you know, entrepreneurs are made for pressure. And that's one thing that was the first thing I noticed, that even managers need to be a little entrepreneurial where they need to positively respond to pressure. And so that was one of the first principles. So I wanted to offer the company. So I went to the operations manager and I said, I don't want to waste your money. it seems like you're managers. Now, I'd been a manager of a clothing store in between my miniature golf course career and my radio career. I had developed managers in ladies' clothing stores and different retail shops. And I said, I think there's something I could bring to your company. And it's changed my life. And this was such a beautiful moment. And I told them about my experience. And that operations manager spoke to me and he said, I knew something has changed about you in the last 2 years since we've been working with you. So I worked with him a total of 4 years. And so from 91 to 93 is when he noticed these changes in me. Now, is that not so beautiful? Because that's the kingdom of God, that we're called to bear fruit that lasts and bear fruit that's noticed. So he gave me that opportunity. I said, well, these were the tools. This is my association. This is who I've been doing business, working with. They've been ministering to me. And they decided, and they were very young in the early 90s. Subway was the fastest growing franchise in the world. And they were building and righteous people, faith-filled people, and wanted to create that culture. And he said, we're facing a crisis right now of character and communication. So you are bringing the exact tools for the opportunity.
Wow. We need to take that to the government because we're facing some of those challenges there too. We're going to have to take a little break right here. So we are going to be back here in just a few minutes to hear the rest of this very interesting story. So come right back here in the Circle of Friends.
Village Gift Barn in Berlin, Ohio carries one-of-a-kind finds, just as unique as you. Our elegant shop has everything you need to dress up your home and your wardrobe. We're dedicated to offering new, exciting merchandise. As you explore our 3 amazing floors, that's over 20,000 square feet, you'll discover everything from home decor and furnishings to a beautifully diverse women's boutique. Are your walls blank? Is your furniture blah? Do you never have anything to wear? We've got you covered. Stop by and let our friendly, knowledgeable team help you create a look that's all your own. Village Gift Barn is located in the heart of Amish country at 4755 State Route 39 in Berlin, Ohio.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. All to Jesus I surrender. Humbly at His feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsaken. Take me, Jesus, take me now. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. All I have and all I'll be. Every moment of time, every gift and desire. Believing You have more for me than my heart could ever dream.
Well, welcome back to the Circle of Friends. And we're here hearing Gail's story. We're going to hear Joanne's story. And we're just so happy. It makes me so happy, Gail, to just hear your story because I see the fruit in companies that you work with, in people that I've connected specifically with you to get those tools into their life and the fruit that that brings. And so I just, we were talking earlier about how we can't separate God. Like I go to church on Sunday and then I go to work during the week. It's like, no, God is 24/7 God and knows no time. And so I just feel like it's so exciting to hear how he walks with us through those things, the things he's called us to, how he leads us and guides us, and that he is glorified through that. So just continue to tell us then what this has meant to you in your life. How do you see God continuing to use you, change you, mold you into just the person that you are today?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm going back to that meeting. When the operations manager of Subway said that I've noticed the change in you, that just meant so much to me because that really was my driving passion. Having 4 sons, you just love our children more than life itself. And that I had not always modeled good character. And that's part of my story as well. And so it was almost like this new opportunity, even though they were teenagers, to just keep trying. In that I would always sometimes I would say my mindset turned from a victim to a victor in 1 hour with that first roundtable. Because it's easy to think it's everyone else's fault.
I should point out here, when she's talking about roundtable, she's talking about the Lared principles that we've talked about many times here on the air. And they're basically principles out of the book of Proverbs that are basic to life. And so when she talks about the principles, that's what she's talking about.
Yes, and those can be found for free on the website, lared.org, lared.org. And it was those faith-based principles that I took into this company. And back in those days, in the early 90s, you didn't have the litigations and things that you have now, so they embraced those fully. And what they did was they took a very courageous step and said, and starting with small beginnings, as we've been talking about, you know what? We have 8 stores, we have 8 managers, and we would like for you to give them the experience that you've had. And see how
Isn't that
it affects
amazing?
them.
They saw the change in you, and they wanted to bring that to their company.
It's the truth. It just starts with so little.
It does.
But that step, I'm going to tell you, that step of calling him and telling him that there was something wrong with his company, I felt Nehemiah's frightening. Like, I am so afraid. I'm going to tell this guy.
When you said that, I thought of Nehemiah coming with his list.
And I'm
Yes.
so afraid. It's like, I'm going to really risk this relationship. And I did pray for favor. I just prayed that if this is supposed to be the solution, that God's going to be in it. Like, I just followed this so much. And he was so gracious. He was so gracious, the operations manager, in trusting because of that relationship that we built. That's why Nehemiah is so relevant. And then I got a little favor with interacting and trust to
And you
interact
had relationship.
to interact with these 8 managers.
Wow. So you began a round table with them
I did.
using the Lared principles.
I did.
Principles from Proverbs. That's amazing.
So what I did with them, and it was a risk because you don't know where any of them are in their faith. There was a risk for them. So it's very entrepreneurial to do it. And then, so the very first thing I did was I did a profile for each one of them one-on-one. And I like to call it the true colors profile because to me a disc is something that might rupture in your back. So I just kind of say it's a true colors profile because it shows our true colors and who we are, how we were designed. And even in the one-on-one, I will reference, well, you're designed like this. And I just assume that. And you don't get religious about it, but it's just an assumption. So in those one-on-ones, I discovered them, but discovered what their talents were, what their gifts were, what some of their blind spots were. And here's what was amazing. He said a couple of things. He said, I'm supposed to go, this was a Friday that I got this courage of. I'm supposed to go to the owner on Monday and tell him, give him a strategy of how we are going to develop people for this opportunity, because we have to grow this thing quickly. And we have a certain amount of people at a certain level. And we don't know, we have no strategy to how to grow them. So your timing is perfect, which is God, right? The timing's always perfect for the opportunity. And that's what led them to say, and some of these managers, they didn't know whether they were going to keep them, let them go. They were in such a tizzy about it, honestly, because they just didn't know where to go next. So doing the profiles, the attitude of the person during the profile told everything. Because there's the developing people principle is the master gets better work from an unskilled apprentice than a trained rebel. Mm-hmm. And I had that in the back of my mind. And to this day, when I'm helping companies coach, helping companies hire, the number one quality that I encourage the whole team to look for is coachability, willingness. Because in the roundtable, you mark yourself 1 to 10. Well, that process of unveiling their temperament, the strengths and the overused strengths, which are their weaknesses, absolutely exposes their coachability of how they respond to that information. And that told the rest. And I did a little report, and the same during roundtable. Who was willing to be transparent and truthful and open with 7 other people at a round table? How cool is that? And I went back with a report. Here's their communication style. Here's their character right now. Here's their coachability. 3 C's. And the rest, like I said, they kind of forced me to start a company. They were like, okay, Gail, well, we want to sign you up for 5 years. Based on this information.
How many years ago was that?
That was 27 years ago.
Right.
So their very
And so
first.
how many stores do they now have?
They have 60 some. But the funny thing is and they're like the top 5% size of franchise, in the world and all of that. In fact, a Subway executive came into a workshop that they were hosting and looked at the one piece of paper that we have all the temperaments, and he said, this is worth $1 million, what this is. I'm like, well, thank you. Okay. I have lots of missions I can go to. And that's really the cool thing. The heart of starting this on my own or as a separate business, was so that I could so the money would provided for international trips to travel with Lored and take that light and oil of the character development process to the nations, to leaders of the nations. And I am happy to say that that's what the company did. The company provided my tickets to go to the different opportunities in the nations. And that's just been the biggest blessing. And then about 4 years into it, the owner of the company said, Gail, we're kicking you out of the nest. We're your only client. I said, yeah, I like it. It's nice, it's fun. It's like, I'm very comfortable. And he was so wise. He said, no, you need to go get other companies. You have to branch out. And then the rest, there was some gentlemen in Roundtable, and they wanted some things. And it was only by divine appointment, not marketing or promoting. So that's really it. And the rest of the story is that within 9 months, and they wrote a letter to this effect, 9 months into this transformational process, and because of the humility of the owners, which it was the foundation of the success, I believe, the environment of the owners was their humility, because they did it first. They wanted it for themselves first. They wanted it for their families first. Usually entrepreneurs want to hide their weaknesses sometimes, And I know that's what I was going in on. So to God be the glory. But turnover decreased 50% in 8 months. And that was just an absolute miracle. And then in 3 years, the company doubled in the next 3 years in size, the number of stores, and every single manager had been developed from within the culture. And that's another amazing statistic, because they could literally grow because of the development. And to this day, and the cool thing is, it was a lot of women and gentlemen, but it was mostly a women culture that had very difficult backgrounds. They didn't have the right walls built up, and they had wrong walls, and some of it, there was devastation. There was holes in their walls, and there was devastations, and brick by brick. And they would agree to come to Bible studies at our home and call me in the middle of the night. It was just beautiful. And the company just let it loose.
Wow.
And the characters and the principles of God built them and transformed their minds, and they could be true leaders where before they were sandwich makers, they were cupbearers. And one little girl walked in, she was 16 years old, walked into the first round table in a store that was going on, because we did round tables in the stores then, not just with managers, and they do them to this day. And she was 16. She ended up, when she was 21, I think, she was overseeing 1/3 of the company
Wow.
because of the character and passion that was unveiled in her.
I love that. I mean, that whole thing is so beautiful. First of all, I see that you took something that affected your life and you turned it into a business that is affecting other lives. And it just continues to grow and continues to spread.
Well, that's authenticity, right? When you see it being played out in someone else's life and you see the changes that are there, and somebody else says, I want what you have. That's kingdom at work.
It is. And what you did is you built entrepreneurs. Because these people are managing stores. I mean, that's what we're talking about. I mean, is entrepreneurship, and so I mean that is just a great story of taking something that is in your hands
Right.
and using it to start a business. I mean, I am just overwhelmed. I mean, that is just absolutely beautiful. So glad you joined us this week.
Thank you
so very much.
Thank you all, because it's just been a privilege to get to share.
And read Nehemiah if you
Yes.
want to, especially the first several chapters there as he begins his journey. Listeners, we just encourage each one of you to maybe just sit before the Lord and ask him. Ask yourself, what is your heart's passion? What has God put in you that he wants to develop, that he wants to grow, that he wants to use in some way? He's given each one of us something to give to the world. And, it doesn't have to be worldwide. It may be. You may be like Gail, and you may travel overseas, or you may just be in your little corner of the world and change lives right where you are. Both are beautiful and absolutely wonderful gifts from the Lord. God is at work, and he wants to be at work in you and through you. And that's our prayer for you today. Thanks again for joining us here in the Circle of Friends. We'll be back tomorrow.
This program was brought to you through the generous support of donors and listeners like you. To contact Circle of Friends Ministries, you can write to P.O. Box 345, Berlin, Ohio, 44610, or find us on Facebook at circleoffriends.fm. Program archives can be found at thelight959.com.